So a problem that some of you might be facing on Linux is with font management. So the problem goes like this. Let's say that you use DWM and ST. Those are two entirely different programs, but both of them allow a configuration option for font, right? So you can change what font are being used. So DWM is a window manager and you can customize the font being used. ST is a terminal. You can customize the font being used. So what you do is that you want to use the Nodo Sans Mono font as your font for both of these programs. So you edit your DWM configuration file and you change it to Nodo Sans Mono, and then you edit your ST configuration file and you change that as well to Nodo Sans Mono. Now if you were to add even more programs, so let's say you start using dmenu and some whole bunch of other programs that also need this font configuration, then all of those programs you're going to use Nodo Sans Mono. Now let's say that suddenly you wanted to change from Nodo Sans Mono to something else. Let's say Deja Vu Sans Mono. That's also another monospace font. Well, then you're going to have to go through all of these configurations and edit from Nodo Sans Mono to Deja Vu Sans Mono. And that is kind of inconvenient. So this is where fontconfig comes in. So fontconfig is basically a sort of configuration for fonts, but it's a universal configuration for fonts. So instead of changing the default font being used in DWM or ST, which is usually just monospace as itself, you change what monospace points to. So in fontconfig, you can create aliases for different fonts. So you can say, hey, if someone uses ASDF as a font, then use this instead. And that is what I'm going to be talking about today. So first of all, whatever programs that you need a font configuration for, make sure that you edit their configuration and you set all of their fonts to something like monospace or sans serif or something like that. And then what you need to do is edit your font config, okay? So font config is located in .config/fontconfig. So you can create that directory if it doesn't exist with like make-p.config font config, and it should create it for you. And I already have a configuration, so I'll just back it up. And the configuration file that you'll want is fonts.conf. So this is going to be your configuration for your fonts, and this is a standard XML document. So what you'll want to do is to say XML version equals 1.0, and this is going to be this little weird tag with the question marks, but that's just how you do it. And you'll also want to add a comment to set the file type in Vim if you do use Vim. This is going to be pretty useful. So you create comments like this in fontconfig or XML. You use this exclamation mark, 2 dashes, and that's the beginning of the comment, and then 2 dashes and the closing tag is going to be the end of the comment. So you can create inline comments as well if you want to. I'm just going to say Vim ft stands for file type equals XML. That should give me a nice looking highlighted version. There we go. Oops, forgot to add that quote here. But now we just need to add some XML, and it's basically like HTML, a little different, but it's all the same. So first you'll need to do the doc type stuff, and you'll need to say the type is fontconfig, and then you'll need to say system, and that's going to be fonts.ddd. Alright, and then you begin a tag called fontconfig, and there we go, and this is where we put all of our font configuration. So the way that fontconfig works, you can say in all of my programs, so for example, you can see that my font in ST has changed now to something else. It's no longer the font I want because I just backed up my configuration and started over. So let's go to .local source DWM and see what font I'm using in DWM. So in here, fonts is set to monospace, right? So it's just the regular monospace font, whatever that may be. And so we're going to change it. We're going to change the default monospace font. And we can do that with alias, because monospace is actually a font alias. It's a font, a sort of a fake font that points to some other fonts. So you can set fallbacks here. So I'm going to say create an alias, and then we're going to give it a name. In this case, I'm going to call it monospace because that's what we want, that's what I am using. And then I'm going to say prefer. So whenever someone uses monospace as a font, prefer these font families instead. And what are we gonna use? Well, we'll start with Inconsolata, which is the one that I'm using right now. So now if I reload DWM, you can see that things have changed, but it's all the same, right? It's the same monospace font. There are no longer rendering for emojis and stuff, and also my title is broken. But other than that, we've got Inconsolata as my monospace font. Now you will see that there are obviously issues here, so my emojis are not going to render properly and some other stuff. So we will want an emoji font, so we can add fallbacks to these fonts in this layer sort of system. So whatever you put first is going to be the first priority, and then the second one, and then the third one, and so on. So install this font called Nodo Color Emoji. We'll talk about font installation at the end of the video. So go ahead and get that with your package manager, or you can install it manually. Again, I'll talk about that in the end of the video. Now if I reload, look at that, it's all beautiful. We've got all of our colors and colored emojis and stuff like that. And we can add even more fallbacks. So let's say I want a Nodo, or actually we'll do symbols nerd font. And that's just gonna give you some nice symbols from the nerd font. I guess it's a library, it's like a library of fonts. And then you can also add, let's see, font awesome. So in case symbols nerd font is not available, you can add font awesome. That's also for some icon rendering. And then finally, I'll just add here Joy Pixels, which is a nice looking emoji font. I haven't installed it yet, but I'll probably find some way to get it. It's really hard to get Joy Pixels, so I don't know where the people that use it got it from, because apparently you have to pay for it. Maybe they made it paid, I don't know. But this right here is not a color emoji, but you get the point, right? So you can create aliases, so you can give the alias a name, and then you can choose whatever to prefer. And this is actually going to be used by most websites and stuff. So if I go here, let's see if there's a, yeah, so in this little monospace block, it will be using this regular monospace font. For some reason it's using something else, but most websites, they'll just use your regular monospace font, right? GitHub is GitHub, that's it. But yeah, it'll use this font monospace and nothing else. And we can create even more aliases. So you can see that in GitHub it's using whatever this font is, but we can change that. Alright, we can use Libertinous Sans, which is the font that I want to use. So I'll say create an alias again, and this time we'll call it Sans. And so I have this Libertinous installed. Well, actually I should talk about font installation now. So when you install fonts, you can either use just your regular package manager. So you can do, like, if you're on Arch Linux, you can say sudo pacman-S, and then you can just do whatever font. So let's say TTF Libertinous, I'm pretty sure that's it. Or if you're on Void Linux like me, you can just say sudo xpbs install-s. You really don't need the S, and then you can just give it whatever font you want. So in this case, Libertinous is not available on Void Linux. So if you want to install a font manually from some sort of website or GitHub repository or anything like that, you just go to the source, and there should be like a zip file. So usually these font download websites, they'll ship zip files. Here it is, libertinous751.zip. I'm gonna use the tar zip, but you can just use the regular zip if you want to. I'm gonna go ahead and save that. Alright, so now how do we actually install it? It's really simple. All you gotta do is go here to .local, share, and then fonts. This is the directory where you download all of your custom fonts. You can also download them to user local share fonts, which for me, I don't have that because I don't use it, but you can put your fonts in there as well. And all of the fonts installed by your package manager will be in user share fonts, right? So that's nice. We have our tar here, so Libertinous, and let's move that here. Now let me actually create a Libertinous directory, and I'm gonna go ahead and copy all of my fonts there. So let's again move this guy in here, and let's go ahead and say tar xf libertinous, and it should extract it for you, and there's a little folder and you have all of your fonts here. So if you actually go here to static, it should have some TTFs, and you can see it's got all of my libertinous fonts that I wanted. So now I can say here refer whenever we use sans, and I'm just gonna say family libertinous sans, and then we'll also want all of our fallbacks, so I'll just go ahead and get these, copy it over, there we go. And now I'm just gonna copy this and paste it in here, because there's this new font standard that everybody uses. It's sans dash serif, because sans, I think it stands for no, so no serif makes sense. And then we'll add the serif fonts. So I'm going to go down here, add the serif fonts. You can see that it's really simple to do with fontconfig. It's just an XML file, and it's very much like HTML, and you add your aliases and whatever they point to. So this one, it's going to be libertinous sans. Beautiful. So now we've got my sans fonts working properly, right? So if I were to open like GIMP, it should have the proper sans serif fonts. Yeah, you can see that it's already using the sans font right here, libertinous sans. I can go ahead and create a new image. Fontconfig is awesome, and you can see that it's using the sans serif font. Or of course you can use sans instead. That's actually not available in GIMP, so that's why I added the sans serif thing. Sans is just an old thing. You probably should have it, but sans serif is just a new thing. So you can see here the fonts are working properly, and that's all nice. So that is how you use fontconfig.